It started with a smile, too bright, too perfectly timed, too cinematic to be entirely real. Cameras caught it, the crowd missed it, and the internet never forgave it. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, the woman who once turned royal life into her own Hollywood script, had done it again. Or had she? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. When a short video clip of Meghan jumping, laughing, and cheering her heart out at a World Series game surfaced online, the world saw what looked like a woman living her best California dream. She stood in the VIP box of the Los Angeles Dodgers home stadium, clapping with infectious enthusiasm as the Dodgers clinched victory over the Toronto Blue Jays. Her friend, Kelly McKee posted it proudly. "Best game ever. Sorry, your team didn't win, but mine did. Dodgers, I love you." But within minutes, that video became a battlefield. Across X, TikTok, and Reddit, the same word echoed like a judgment. Fake. Looks so fake. She is so fake. Of course it was staged. Perfect angle, perfect lighting, perfect Meghan. And then there was Prince Harry, silent, stiff, almost uncomfortable. The man who once loved being the fun one, the rebel, the spontaneous spirit of the royal family, now looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His team had lost, yes, but this went deeper. He wasn't just losing a baseball game. He was losing the illusion of authenticity, and the world was watching it crumble in real time. Was this a simple sports moment or a carefully curated performance? People debated it endlessly. Some saw a light-hearted woman celebrating her team's win. Others saw a desperate actress trying to prove she was happy, that her marriage was thriving, that Hollywood had embraced her again. And in the middle of it all stood Meghan Markle, accused of being the director, producer, and star of her own emotional movie. But what no one expected was what came next. Days later, Meghan broke her silence. And with just 5 words, she reignited the firestorm. "I'm sorry I faked it." The internet exploded. Was she admitting to staging the Dodgers moment? To manipulating public perception once again? Or was she confessing something much deeper? Something that went far beyond baseball, fame, and filtered smiles? Because those words weren't part of a press release or a polished statement. They came from a private message, a leaked apology that would peel back the glamorous veneer and expose a woman caught between reality and performance. But let's rewind. This wasn't Meghan's first time being called fake. Ever since her royal exit, that word has clung to her like a shadow. Every public smile was scrutinized. Every hug, every laugh, every camera glance, dissected. And when you live under that microscope long enough, you either break or you learn to perform. That night at Dodger Stadium wasn't just another celebrity appearance. It was part of a larger story, one about image, identity, and the desperate need to be believed. Because for Meghan Markle, nothing, not even a baseball game, happens by accident. Let's talk about the setup. Kelly McKee, Meghan's close friend and co-founder of the Alliance of Moms, was the one who shared the clip. A harmless post, it seemed. 2 friends celebrating a game. Except Kelly's caption, "Sorry, your team didn't win, but mine did," felt just a little too polished. The shot itself? Centered perfectly. Everyone visible. Meghan front and center. Lighting flawless. Camera steady. Almost as if someone had rehearsed it. And maybe they had. Because insiders close to Meghan claim this wasn't just a spontaneous celebration. It was a social media moment carefully crafted to show Meghan as lively, authentic, and fun. The goal? To rebuild her damaged image after months of negative press, Netflix backlash, and the quiet failure of her podcast deal. But if it was meant to look real, it backfired spectacularly. Within hours, social media erupted with comments accusing her of faking her joy, her friendship, even her marriage. The most damning ones pointed to Harry, slumped beside her, his hands barely clapping, his eyes scanning the crowd instead of his wife. It was the ultimate contrast. One half of the couple performing joy, the other visibly detached. And here's the thing, people notice. They notice when your eyes smile differently than your lips. They notice when your laughter comes half a second too late. They notice when your husband, once the rebel prince, starts to look like a man sitting through a scene he didn't agree to shoot. The Dodgers' win was real. But was Meghan's happiness? That's where the story shifts, from performance to confession. Because a few days after the video went viral, Meghan reportedly messaged a friend, saying, "I'm sorry I faked it." Not to the public, not to her followers, to a confidant who asked if she was okay after the backlash. And what she meant wasn't what anyone thought. She wasn't apologizing for faking joy at a baseball game. She was apologizing for pretending she was fine when she wasn't. Behind that high-energy celebration, sources say Meghan was exhausted, frustrated, and anxious. She'd been trying to fix her public image, repair her relationship with Harry, and prove that she could still command the world's attention all at once. That night at the stadium was supposed to be simple, normal, a rare date night. But when the cameras came out, instinct took over. The actress in her resurfaced. And in that moment, as Harry stood beside her, stoic and tired, Meghan did what she's always done best. She performed. But something went wrong. The audience didn't buy the act. For Meghan, that rejection hit harder than any royal headline. Because for someone who's built her entire life around image, nothing cuts deeper than being told your smile isn't real. And Harry? He's caught in the crossfire. He didn't sign up to be a supporting character in a show about authenticity. But somewhere between royal duty and Hollywood ambition, that's exactly where he found himself, the quiet foil to his wife's spotlight. The man who once defied cameras now has one aimed at him in every private moment. And it's taking its toll. People close to the couple say the Dodgers incident caused more tension than anyone realized. Not because of the criticism, Meghan's used to that, but because of what Harry said afterward. He reportedly asked her one question that night, a question that still hangs between them like smoke. Was that real? 3 words that turned a playful evening into a mirror reflecting everything they've become. Maybe he was talking about her excitement. Maybe he was talking about their life. But for Meghan, the question stung. Because she's been asking herself the same thing. Is anything real anymore? That's what her private apology was truly about. The faking, the smiling, the performing, the exhausting need to seem okay when you're crumbling behind the camera lens. She once told Oprah she lost her voice inside the royal machine. Now, she's losing her sense of self in the Hollywood one. But here's where it gets darker and more ironic. The woman accused of staging everything might have been the only one telling the truth. When she said, "I faked it," it wasn't about deceiving the world. It was about survival. Pretending to be fine because the alternative, showing pain, fear, or regret, would give her critics exactly what they wanted. That's the paradox of Meghan Markle. When she smiles, they say she's faking. When she cries, they say she's acting. When she hides, they say she's manipulating. There's no way out. Only performance. And yet, in her private apology, we glimpse something different: fatigue, honesty, even guilt. Because maybe she finally realized what the world has been trying to tell her. No one believes her anymore. The Dodgers celebration wasn't the first time the world accused Meghan of being scripted. Remember the Oprah Garden interview? The tears, the dramatic pauses. Critics said it looked rehearsed. Remember her New York paparazzi chase story? Many question the details. Every time Meghan tries to connect, the narrative shifts from empathy to accusation. That's what makes this moment at Dodger Stadium so haunting. It wasn't just about baseball. It was about credibility. And when she finally whispered, "I faked it," it wasn't just an admission. It was a surrender. Because how do you fight a world that's already decided you're lying? Maybe you don't. Maybe you stop fighting. Maybe you retreat. And that's exactly what Meghan did after the Dodgers' backlash. She disappeared from public view. No new posts. No red carpets. No interviews. Just silence. But silence has a way of amplifying what's left unsaid. Rumors swirled. Some said she and Harry fought that night, that her over-the-top reaction embarrassed him. Others said her PR team begged Kelly McKee-Zajfin to delete the clip. One insider even claimed Meghan felt set up by her own friend. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear. The image Meghan tried to control was slipping away from her hands. And in that loss of control, something unexpected happened. She began to tell the truth. Not to the world. Not yet. But to herself. Her apology wasn't a brand move. It was a crack in the armor. The kind of line that tells you someone's done pretending, even if they don't know what comes next. It was short, emotional, human. "I'm sorry I faked it." 5 words that could mean everything or nothing. But what if? And this is the part that's rarely talked about. What if Meghan wasn't just apologizing for faking happiness? What if she was apologizing for faking something much bigger, something that could unravel her entire public identity? Because those close to her say that moment of honesty opened a floodgate. One that would lead to the most vulnerable and shocking confession she's ever made. One that involves Harry, Hollywood, and the secret behind her constant need to prove she's okay. And that confession, it's coming. Because when Meghan finally broke her silence to the public, her words weren't defensive. They weren't polished. They weren't rehearsed. They were raw, unfiltered, almost painful to hear. And when you listen closely, it's not just the story of a woman accused of faking happiness. It's the story of someone who doesn't know how to stop. The woman who once controlled every camera angle is about to lose control of her own story. And it all began with one smile, one camera, and one question that refuses to fade. What's real, and what's just the act? Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It all started with a video, just 20 seconds long. No dialogue, no context, just Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, clapping, laughing, and bouncing in excitement while the Los Angeles Dodgers secured their World Series win. Prince Harry stood beside her, expression unreadable, arms folded, posture tense. On the surface, it looked like a normal moment between two fans with different teams. But within hours, that clip became one of the most dissected videos on the internet. So let's start with the simplest question of all. Why did this tiny, harmless clip set the internet on fire? Because when it comes to Meghan Markle, nothing is ever just harmless. Every gesture, every glance, every flick of her hair is analyzed, debated, and turned into evidence for or against her authenticity. And that night at Dodger Stadium, October 27th, the game that sealed the Dodgers' win against the Toronto Blue Jays, became the spark that lit a digital wildfire. It began innocently enough. Kelly McKee-Zajfin, a close friend of Meghan's and co-founder of the charity Alliance of Moms, uploaded a quick Instagram story from the luxury suite they shared. It was supposed to be lighthearted, friends celebrating a victory. But Kelly's caption said more than she realized. Best game ever. Sorry your team didn't win, but mine did. Dodgers, I love you. Those words carried a casual wink. But the video told a different story. In it, Meghan's smile looked like something out of a commercial. Perfect teeth, perfect lighting, perfect joy, too perfect. And that's where the internet drew its first line in the sand. Looks staged. Fake enthusiasm. She knew the camera was rolling. And maybe she did. Watch closely, and you notice it. The way Meghan's gaze shifts, just slightly, toward the phone filming her. The way she adjusts her body so her profile catches the best light. It's the instinct of someone who's lived her life in front of cameras. But Harry? His body language couldn't have been more different. He's standing a step behind her, his hands loosely clasped. His face doesn't move much. Not even when Meghan throws her hands up in celebration. His smile, if you can call it that, flickers for half a second, then disappears. The contrast was magnetic. The more joyful Meghan appeared, the more detached Harry seemed. And the internet noticed. Within hours, the clip jumped from Instagram to X, then Reddit, TikTok, YouTube. Thousands of comments poured in, each dissecting the same moment from a dozen different angles. Some claimed Meghan was acting again. Others said Harry looked like a hostage. One post went viral with over 1 million views. If you watch carefully, Meghan looks right into the camera before pretending to cheer. This woman never does anything without a reason. And that's when the theory began to form. The idea that Meghan had staged her own viral celebration. Now let's pause and ask, stage for what? Publicity? Image repair? A subtle way to remind Hollywood that she still knew how to command attention? Maybe all of the above. Because around that same time, Meghan's brand was struggling. Her podcast deal had crumbled. Her Netflix projects were either postponed or quietly shelved. The Sussexes' approval ratings were at their lowest since leaving the monarchy. They needed a win, not a baseball win, but a public one. So, when Meghan showed up at the World Series game, camera-ready, radiant, dressed in California casual chic, it didn't look random. It looked like a move. And when the internet smells strategy, it doesn't forgive easily. Let's rewind just a few hours before the clip went viral. According to attendees in the same suite, Meghan was cheerful but visibly aware of her surroundings. She chatted, posed for photos, laughed loudly at small jokes. But one detail stood out. She always made sure to be in view of the lens. That's not paranoia. That's training. Years of red carpets, interviews, and public scrutiny have taught Meghan one thing. The camera isn't your enemy, it's your weapon. But this time, it might have misfired. Because once the video hit social media, the reaction was anything but admiration. It wasn't the Meghan is back moment her team might have hoped for. Instead, it turned into a global takedown. Fake AF. She even fakes being a sports fan. Nothing genuine about this woman. Harsh words. But here's what made it worse. Harry's indifference gave those comments weight. In the court of public opinion, Meghan and Harry's dynamic became the exhibit. The world read his silence as proof. Proof that he was tired. Proof that he was embarrassed. Proof that maybe, just maybe, she was the one who needed the spotlight more than the love. And when you look at that video again, knowing what you know now, it's hard not to see the tension bleeding through the screen. The camera shakes slightly as Meghan jumps. Harry glances sideways, his lips pressing together. Meghan laughs louder. He doesn't move. Freeze that frame. That's the marriage millions have been debating for years. Two people in the same frame, but on completely different frequencies. Now, here's where the story gets darker. A few online investigators, self-proclaimed Sussex analysts, started digging. They compared the clip to other public videos of Meghan and Harry. The pattern was unsettling. The laughter that seems rehearsed. The timing of the camera pans. The same friend circle posting polished, cinematic clips at just the right moments. It wasn't hard to connect dots. To many, this wasn't an isolated video. It was part of a pattern. A brand revival tour disguised as casual fun. But Meghan's defenders pushed back. They argued that the backlash said more about the internet's obsession with tearing her down than about Meghan herself. She can't even enjoy a baseball game without people calling her fake, one fan tweeted. Let the woman live. Fair point. But perception is a tricky thing. When you've built a career on image, every image becomes a statement. And that's exactly why this moment mattered. Because to the world, this wasn't about baseball. It was about whether Meghan Markle, the woman who claimed she craved privacy, could ever stop performing long enough to be real. Think about it. Every normal moment of her life seems to come with perfect lighting, perfect framing, and a viral caption. How do you stay authentic when every move looks like a brand campaign? That's the question haunting Meghan. And as the backlash spread, even her allies began to worry. According to a source close to the couple, Harry was visibly upset after reading the comments. He felt trapped between defending Meghan and resenting the chaos. But for Meghan, silence wasn't an option. She's not built to ignore criticism. She's built to control the story. And that's what made what came next so surprising. Instead of defending herself publicly, Meghan went quiet. Not just quiet, eerily quiet. Her team didn't issue a statement. No social media posts. No leaks to friendly outlets. Just silence. And that silence made people even more suspicious. When celebrities stay silent during controversy, it usually means one of two things: damage control or internal chaos. In Meghan's case, it was both. Behind the scenes, she was said to be furious with Kelly McKee-Zadgefin for posting the clip in the first place. Friends claimed Meghan didn't approve the video before it went public. One insider told a tabloid, she thought it was just a quick story among friends, not something the world would dissect. But that's the price of being Meghan Markle. Nothing stays private. Every smile becomes a headline. Every moment becomes content. And that realization hit her hard. Because, ironically, the moment she was accused of staging wasn't even her plan. The irony is almost cinematic. An actress accused of faking authenticity in a moment she didn't even control. But here's where the plot thickens. After the backlash reached its peak, a private message leaked from someone close to Meghan. It was short, raw, and surprisingly vulnerable. I'm sorry I faked it. At first, no one knew what it meant. Was she admitting to staging the Dodgers celebration? Was this her way of saying the critics were right? Or was she talking about something else entirely? As it turns out, the apology wasn't about the video. It was about the pressure behind it. The endless need to appear okay. Sources later claimed Meghan had confided in a friend that she was tired of pretending everything was perfect. That the constant performance of happiness, of marriage, of control was breaking her. And when that confession slipped out, it was like oxygen on fire. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about Meghan faking joy. It was about Meghan faking strength. And that shifted everything. Because beneath the polished smiles and perfect angles, there was a woman crumbling under the weight of her own image. Let's not forget, this is someone who's been playing roles her entire life. From Suits to Duchess to global brand, Meghan Markle has never been just herself in public. Always performing, always editing, always aware. But the Dodgers video? That was the breaking point. The world saw a woman pretending to celebrate. Meghan saw herself pretending to survive. And Harry? He saw something else entirely. A reflection of what their marriage had become. Two people performing different versions of the same story. That's why the moment hit so hard. It wasn't about baseball. It was about the truth leaking out in 20 seconds of accidental honesty. The smile that didn't reach her eyes. The husband who didn't cheer. The silence that followed. It all added up to something undeniable. The facade was cracking. And when Meghan's private apology surfaced, it confirmed what the internet had suspected all along. Something was deeply wrong behind the camera. But what exactly was Meghan apologizing for? Was it just about faking joy? Or was she confessing to something far more painful? Because as one insider would later reveal, that apology, those 5 words, weren't meant for the public. They were meant for someone much closer. Someone who'd been silently watching her fall apart. And when he read those words, his reaction wasn't sympathy. It was anger. Because in his mind, Meghan hadn't just faked happiness. She'd faked him. And that realization would ignite the next chapter in their unraveling. One that no amount of PR could fix. Because what happened after that apology didn't just change how the world saw Meghan. It changed how Harry saw her too. And what came next would shatter the illusion completely. How long can someone keep pretending before the mask cracks? That was the question Meghan Markle had been dodging long before that viral Dodgers video. But now, there was no escaping it. Everyone had seen the smile. Everyone had dissected the laugh. Everyone had pointed at her and said the word she hated most, fake. But the truth? The truth was far more complicated and far more painful. Behind that perfect grin, Meghan was unraveling. Quietly, invisibly. Because while the world saw a confident woman at a baseball game, what they didn't see was the panic that had been building inside her for months. The panic of a woman trapped between who she wanted to be and who the world demanded she stay. Let's rewind to the weeks before that Dodgers game. Meghan's world was already wobbling. Her Netflix deal, once hailed as her grand Hollywood rebirth, was hanging by a thread. Executives had reportedly grown disappointed with the lack of fresh concepts. Her Spotify contract had collapsed in embarrassment, leaving her labeled as lazy and difficult to work with in the press. And her relationship with the royal family, already shattered, had reached an icy deadlock. She was desperate to be seen again, but not just seen, liked. And that's the curse of celebrity, isn't it? The endless hunger for approval, even from those who can't stand you. But for Meghan, it wasn't just about fame. It was about identity. Once upon a time, she was the girl who made her own way, a biracial actress clawing her path through a ruthless industry. Now, she was a duchess turned Hollywood exile. Every move she made was weighed, measured, and mocked. Imagine waking up every day knowing that millions of people you'll never meet are waiting for you to slip up. Imagine smiling anyway. That was Meghan's life. And that's why that Dodgers night mattered so much. Because it wasn't just a baseball game, it was a test. A test to prove she could still win hearts. That she could still be the people's duchess in a different kind of crown, a Los Angeles baseball cap. Except it didn't work. The performance, if you can even call it that, backfired. Instead of winning sympathy, it reignited resentment. But here's what no one saw. The pressure behind that smile didn't start that night. It had been building for years, layered like glass under strain, waiting for the smallest vibration to shatter. Meghan's inner circle says that by late summer, she had become obsessed with perception. She read the comments. She watched the videos. She memorized the headlines that mocked her. She doesn't let anything go, one insider said. She takes it personally every time. That's what her friends say really broke her. Not the comments, not the accusations, but Harry's indifference. Because to Meghan, attention without connection feels like nothing. That's why, when the backlash hit later that night, she didn't rage about the tweets or the headlines. She fixated on the image of Harry beside her, unmoved, disconnected. She reportedly told a friend, "I looked happy, but I wasn't." And that, right there, is the tragedy behind the smile. Every time Meghan tries to appear relatable, the world calls her fake. Every time she tries to be strong, they call her manipulative. Every time she tries to be honest, they accuse her of playing victim. So what does she do? She smiles harder. Because smiling, pretending everything is fine, is the only thing she can still control. But inside, that control is slipping. Behind the scenes, Meghan's team had been urging her to soften her image, to show more vulnerability. They believed people might reconnect with her if she dropped the perfect Duchess act. Ironically, the Dodgers video was supposed to do exactly that. A relaxed Meghan. Casual clothes. Natural lighting. A fun night out with friends. Authenticity, repackaged and ready to post. But authenticity can't be manufactured. The more you try to control it, the more it betrays you. And in Meghan's case, it betrayed her in front of millions. After the video went viral, Meghan's anxiety spiked. Sources said she couldn't sleep. She reread every nasty comment. She started asking questions like, "Why can't they just believe I was happy?" But deep down, she knew the answer, because they didn't trust her anymore. And that's what truly broke her. For someone who built her entire career on being likable, losing public trust feels like losing oxygen. That's when the apology came. Late one night, after hours of scrolling through headlines and whispering arguments with Harry, she texted a friend, "I'm sorry I faked it." She didn't mean the baseball game. She meant the act of pretending to be okay. It was an admission of emotional exhaustion, a rare crack in her usually unshakable control. And when that message leaked, it was like the world finally saw what Meghan had been hiding. The pressure to stay perfect was crushing her. Harry saw it too, but instead of comfort, he offered distance. Because for him, that apology wasn't vulnerability, it was confirmation. Confirmation that the woman beside him was still trapped in the role she couldn't let go of. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not the criticism, not the backlash, but realizing that even Harry didn't see the real her anymore. To him, she was still the actress. To the world, she was still the opportunist. And to herself, she wasn't sure who she was at all. That's why her next move shocked everyone. Instead of disappearing, she decided to fight back. Not with statements or interviews, but with something more subtle, more dangerous. She began to craft a new narrative, one that would make the world question everything they thought they knew about her. If they saw her as fake, she would make them wonder what real even meant. If they saw her as controlling, she would show them chaos. And if they saw her as broken, she would show them strength, even if she had to fake it again. Because Meghan Markle isn't just surviving scandal anymore. She's studying it. And the woman who once said she wanted privacy has learned how to weaponize exposure itself. But there's a cost to that. Because every time she reinvents herself, another piece of her real identity slips away. And that's where Harry comes back into the story. The man who fell in love with the woman behind the camera, only to realize he might never see her again. At the Dodgers game, that realization flickered across his face. You can almost see the moment it hits him, when she turns toward the phone, flashing that brilliant, practiced smile, and he looks away. It's not anger. It's recognition. He knows the performance when he sees it. He's lived beside it for years. And for the first time, he doesn't want to play along. That's what broke the illusion for millions watching. The split-second disconnect between Meghan's joy and Harry's silence. It wasn't just a marriage on camera. It was a metaphor for the entire Sussex story. One half chasing relevance, the other half running from it. But Meghan didn't see it that way. To her, that night wasn't failure. It was proof of how easily perception could be flipped. If she could trigger such a storm over one video, imagine what she could do with a deliberate story. And that's where the next stage begins. The stage where Meghan stops reacting and starts orchestrating again. Because if she couldn't win people's hearts, she could at least keep them watching. And in the world she's built, attention is its own currency. That's the paradox she's living now. Every scandal hurts her and feeds her at the same time. Every accusation cuts her deeper but keeps her relevant. She can't stop. She doesn't know how to stop. And even when she tries to apologize, even when she admits she's faking it, she's still performing. Because the only way she knows how to exist in public is through control. But control is a fragile thing. And as Harry begins to drift further away, Meghan's grip on that control weakens. Because behind the smiles and the strategy, there's one truth she can't manipulate. Harry's eyes that night told the real story. And that story wasn't love. It was exhaustion. The exhaustion of a man who's been living inside someone else's script. The same exhaustion that would soon push him to the edge, to say words that would change everything between them. Because after that night, after Meghan's apology, after the storm of online chaos, Harry finally broke his silence. And what he said didn't sound like a man defending his wife. It sounded like a man finally admitting he was done playing along. But before we get to that, we need to understand what drove him to that breaking point. Because his silence that night wasn't boredom. It wasn't detachment. It was protest. And when he finally decided to speak, he didn't hold back. What he said next would expose the cracks not just in their marriage, but in the entire image they had built together. And when those words left his mouth, Meghan realized the one thing she'd spent years avoiding had finally arrived. The act was over. And this time, there would be no retakes. What do you say when silence says it all? That's what the world asked the moment the camera panned across Meghan Markle's beaming face and landed on Prince Harry. Motionless, unreadable, and visibly elsewhere. It was the kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was loud, defiant, almost angry. Harry's quiet that night wasn't a lack of interest in baseball. It was something much deeper, darker, and older. It was the silence of a man who'd reached his breaking point but hadn't yet decided whether to walk away or explode. And that's what makes this part of the story so haunting. Because when you study that video again, not Meghan's laughter, not her enthusiasm, but Harry's stillness, you realize it wasn't boredom you were watching. It was rebellion. Rebellion against what? Against the camera, against the performance, against the illusion of happy couple that he could no longer sustain. Because Prince Harry, the boy who grew up trapped in the most photographed family in the world, knew exactly what that moment meant. He'd spent his whole life being used for optics, royal tours, balcony waves, weddings televised to millions. He'd run halfway across the world to escape it. And here he was again, in Los Angeles, watching the same play unfold, different stage, same script. The woman he left everything for was smiling for the camera, and he could feel the lens tightening around him like a noose. For the first time, he wasn't just uncomfortable. He was done. Let's go back to what people saw that night. Meghan jumping and cheering as if her life depended on it. Harry standing beside her, his eyes distant, his body rigid. He doesn't cheer when the Dodgers score. He doesn't glance at Meghan when she celebrates. His hands are clasped, his jaw tight. Some called it disinterest. Others called it humiliation. But those who know him say it was something else entirely, protest. Harry wasn't refusing to cheer for the Dodgers. He was refusing to play the part of Prince Charming in California. You can almost read his mind in that moment. Not again. Not like this. He wasn't angry at Meghan for celebrating. He was angry at the performance that came with it. The way every moment of their lives had turned into content. Because that's what their world had become. Every dinner, every walk, every family outing, someone was filming. Someone was posting. Even their friends treated them like trending topics. And Harry, the man who once begged for privacy, was watching it all happen again, only now under the Californian sun instead of Buckingham's shadow. And he hated it. Those close to Harry say that after the video went viral, he didn't speak to Meghan for hours. Not in the car. Not when they got home. He went straight to the guest room and closed the door. When he finally did speak, it wasn't loud, but it cut deep. He asked her one question. The same question that would later echo across the tabloids and podcasts. The same question that would shake Meghan to her core. Was any of that real? 5 words. Calm. Controlled. But loaded with years of frustration. Was any of it real? The laughter, the hugs, the constant look at us moments that filled their feeds and headlines? Was this still their marriage? Or just another performance for an audience that no longer cared? Meghan reportedly froze. To her, that question wasn't just about the game. It was about everything. Because Harry had never said it before. Not like that. Not with that tone. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment. It was fatigue. He was tired of the cameras. Tired of the narrative. Tired of the illusion. And for Meghan, that question felt like betrayal. Because in her mind, she wasn't performing for fame. She was fighting for relevance. For survival. To her, these moments weren't staged. They were armor. Every smile was protection. Every photo, a shield against obscurity. But Harry didn't see armor. He saw manipulation. He saw the woman he loved disappearing into a character she couldn't stop playing. And that terrified him. Because Harry knows what happens when your life becomes a show. He watched it destroy his mother. He watched it turn grief into headlines and heartbreak into spectacle. And now, he was watching it consume his marriage. The tragedy is that Meghan didn't even see it happening. She saw the Dodgers clip as harmless fun, a way to show people she could still laugh, still live. But to Harry, it was proof that they'd become exactly what they both swore they'd never be, manufactured. That's why he went silent that night. It wasn't punishment. It was resistance. He wasn't going to smile for a camera he didn't control. Not again. Not after everything he'd lost for freedom. And Meghan, standing there in that luxury suite, surrounded by friends, lights, laughter, felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Alone. Because Harry's silence said everything she'd been afraid to hear. That maybe the man who once walked away from royalty to stand beside her no longer believed in the story they were selling. That maybe the fairy tale they fought so hard to defend had turned into another performance neither of them could stop acting in. Behind closed doors, that silence turned into tension. According to one insider, Meghan confronted Harry later that night. "You embarrassed me," she allegedly said. "You made it look like you didn't even want to be there." Harry's response was quiet, but devastating. "Maybe I didn't." That sentence hung in the air like smoke. Because what he meant wasn't just the baseball game. He meant the cameras, the constant pretending, the endless need to prove they were okay when they weren't. That conversation was short, sharp, and final. It didn't end in shouting. It ended in silence. And that's when things began to unravel. Harry started spending more time away from joint appearances. He skipped casual outings that Meghan planned. He avoided photo ops with friends. Even when they were in the same room, people noticed how far apart they sat. In public, Meghan doubled down on positivity. In private, Harry withdrew. It's a pattern psychologists call emotional retreat. When one partner overcompensates with energy and performance, the other retreats inward, creating a vacuum of disconnection. And the more Harry withdrew, the louder Meghan became. She posted happier pictures. She smiled wider. She talked more about living in gratitude. But you can't perform your way out of distance. Harry had already checked out emotionally. To him, the Dodgers video wasn't just a bad look. It was the symbol of everything wrong in their world. Too much exposure, too little authenticity, too many friends filming private moments for public validation. He missed the simplicity of life before the noise. The man who used to sneak Meghan through palace back doors was now sneaking out of his own house for peace. That's the irony. He'd given up his crown to escape the cameras, only to find himself trapped by them again. This time through the woman he trusted to understand. And Meghan? She couldn't see it. She thought the cameras made them relevant. He thought they made them prisoners. That's where their love began to fracture, not from betrayal or scandal, but from a difference in what freedom meant. To Meghan, freedom was visibility. To Harry, it was silence. And those two ideas can't coexist. That's why his silence at the Dodgers game was so powerful. It wasn't indifference. It was a quiet rebellion. And yet, even as the dust settled, one rumor refused to die, that the Queen had written a separate letter for Andrew, sealed and stored alongside her will. When Charles finally found it, weeks after the funeral, he hesitated before reading. The handwriting was unmistakable. The letter was short. It contained only one sentence. "Remember what we are meant to serve." That was it. No anger, no explanation, just a final reminder that even a prince serves something greater than himself. Those words still haunt the family today. Because if Andrew's fall was inevitable, it was also symbolic, a warning of what happens when personal desire eclipses royal duty. The Queen had seen that danger in him, and in others, which is why her decisions didn't stop with Andrew. They extended across the ocean to another son in spirit, if not in loyalty. The one she once adored, the one she couldn't reach, Prince Harry. And when Harry learned of his own fate within that same will, his reaction made Andrew's look tame. Because the Queen hadn't just excluded him, she had written him a message that would shatter him. But before we get to that letter, you need to understand how the Queen saw him, not as a rebel, but as a tragedy. And that's exactly where the next chapter begins, with a grandson who walked away from everything she stood for, and the grandmother who couldn't decide whether to grieve or to fight back. Because the Queen's judgment of Harry would make the entire world gasp. And it wasn't just about inheritance. It was about betrayal, redemption, and the kind of love that even a crown can't erase. But what she wrote to him, privately and painfully, was unlike anything she'd ever said before. And no one, not even Meghan, saw it coming. There are stories that shake a monarchy, and then there are stories that haunt it forever. Meghan Markle's name would come to represent both. To the public, she was the glamorous outsider, the modern face of royalty who promised to reinvent the institution. But behind palace doors, her name had become something else entirely, a symbol of fracture, of lost trust, of a storm that the Queen herself could not contain. The Queen had welcomed Meghan at first. She believed Harry's choice to marry for love was, in some ways, a sign of progress, a reflection of the modern world she had tried to adapt to for 70 years. Meghan seemed intelligent, confident, capable of charm. She could do good, the Queen reportedly said after their first private tea at Buckingham Palace, if she understands the weight she carries. But that was always the problem. Meghan understood the weight. She just didn't want to carry it. From the beginning, there were whispers. Meghan questioned traditions, rejected protocol, and challenged staff in ways that startled even the most seasoned courtiers. At first, the Queen brushed it off as growing pains. She is adjusting, she said. But soon, the adjustment turned to disruption. The first real crack appeared before the wedding. Rumors swirled that Meghan had reduced a senior aide to tears over seating arrangements. Another claimed she argued about which tiara she would wear, and the Queen herself had to intervene. Meghan, she reportedly said, "You get the tiara I give you." The line, firm and final, sent a clear message. This was not Hollywood. Still, the Queen kept her composure. She believed patience could heal misunderstanding. But patience has limits, especially when the institution itself begins to unravel in the public eye. The Queen's staff noticed something during those early days. Every time Meghan broke protocol, Harry defended her. Every time palace aides tried to help, they were rebuffed. "She's different," Harry would say. "You don't understand her." But by protecting her from accountability, he only isolated them both further. Then came the media frenzy. Meghan's interviews, her complaints about royal life, the infamous comment about how no one asked if I was okay. It wasn't that the Queen lacked empathy. She had endured loneliness herself, and she knew the weight of public duty better than anyone. But what troubled her was the timing. Meghan's discontent coinciding with national mourning, public divisions, and growing distrust in the royal family. She chose the stage over the crown. The Queen told her private secretary one evening, "I cannot make her love what she does not respect." When Megxit erupted, that seismic announcement that Harry and Meghan were stepping back as senior royals, the Queen's disappointment was deeper than anger. She called it a personal sadness. But even in sadness, she moved with calculation. She ordered that all discussions regarding the Sussexes' departure be documented, witnessed, and signed. The monarchy, she said, must protect itself from the unpredictability of emotion. That phrase, the unpredictability of emotion, would later appear in her private will notes beside Meghan's name. And then came the Oprah interview. The world watched as Harry and Meghan accused the palace of cruelty, secrecy, and racism. The Queen watched too, in silence. Aides said she sat upright through the entire broadcast, her expression unreadable. When it ended, she simply said, "Recollections may vary." That sentence became one of the most famous royal statements of her reign. But in private, her words were less polished. To one trusted friend, she reportedly said, she wanted the crown without the cost. And that, to the Queen, was unforgivable. Still, she never spoke publicly against Meghan. She refused to add fuel to the fire. Instead, she turned to the one power she still held, legacy. When she began rewriting her will in those final months, she did something extraordinary, something that even Charles didn't expect. She separated personal affection from royal duty. Her affection for Harry remained, but for Meghan, she drew a distinct line. "She is not of the crown," the Queen wrote in her private notes. "She does not wish to serve it. Let her find her own crown." That line became infamous when the will was finally revealed. Inside the legal documents, there was no mention of Meghan's name in any financial, ceremonial, or symbolic capacity. No heirlooms, no estates, not even the faint courtesy of a gesture. Every trace of her royal connection had been scrubbed clean. To the public, it looked cold. To those who understood the Queen, It was deliberate. She wasn't being spiteful. She was drawing boundaries, protecting what she had built from someone she believed didn't understand its value. But Meghan didn't take it quietly. When word of her exclusion reached California, she was said to have been stunned. At first, she believed the reports were false. The Queen would never do that, she allegedly told her team. She loved me. But when the truth was confirmed by royal sources, her tone changed. She felt betrayed. After everything I endured, after everything I gave up, she said, they erased me. Her lawyers began reviewing the details, looking for technicalities. Could the Queen's will even affect matters of royal title and recognition? Could Meghan contest a document so protected by secrecy laws? But even her attorneys quickly realized the futility. The Queen's will wasn't a public document. It couldn't be challenged in court. It existed beyond ordinary reach. A monarch's final decree, sealed by history itself. And so, Meghan turned to what she knew best, the media. A series of anonymous interviews began appearing in American magazines. Stories framed Meghan as misunderstood, painted the palace as archaic, and hinted that certain royal records had been misrepresented. But within weeks, those very articles backfired. Public sympathy began to wane. People started asking whether she had gone too far. Meanwhile, in London, Charles made a decision that stunned royal watchers. He instructed palace officials to quietly reassign Meghan's former patronages, the theater trusts, the animal charities, the women's initiatives, to Princess Anne and the Duchess of Edinburgh. It was a symbolic but decisive act, the monarchy moving on without her. One aide described the moment the Queen's handwritten notes about Meghan were read aloud during that private family meeting. It was like a funeral, the aide said. Not for a person, but for a relationship. And yet, the notes weren't cruel. They were heartbreakingly human. She is gifted, the Queen had written. But she sees the gift as burden, not calling. There was even a final line. If she seeks peace, she may yet find it, but not here. To those words, Charles reportedly added his own in silence. Amen. But the Queen's message went further than the will itself. In a separate sealed envelope addressed to the Duchess of Sussex, she left a short handwritten letter, one that Meghan didn't receive until weeks after the funeral. It was hand-delivered by a British diplomat in California. No royal crest, no fanfare, just an envelope marked personal. Inside, the Queen's handwriting was unmistakable, small, neat, precise. The letter contained only a few sentences. You were loved because he loved you. But love alone cannot carry a crown. I wish you peace in the path you have chosen. Those who saw Meghan read the letter say she cried. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she folded the paper carefully and put it away. That night, she reportedly told Harry, "Your grandmother wrote to me." She said goodbye. Harry didn't reply. He just sat there, silent. Because he knew his letter, his own final message from the Queen, was still waiting in Windsor. And when he opened it, everything he thought he knew about her love, his place, and his future would collapse. But before we open that envelope, let's pause on one final twist, something even Charles didn't know. In her private journals, the Queen had written about Meghan long before the scandals, long before the headlines. She had sensed something. Charm is her armor, she wrote. But behind it, there is restlessness, a heart searching for meaning, not service. That entry, dated 2018, showed just how early the Queen had seen what others missed. She didn't hate Meghan. She pitied her. But pity is a fragile mercy. And by the end, mercy had given way to necessity. The monarchy could not afford another fracture. And so, when the Queen sealed her will, she sealed Meghan's chapter too. Yet, Meghan's story wasn't over. Because after the will was made public and the world absorbed its meaning, she made a move no one saw coming. A new interview, a new revelation, and a statement that would send shockwaves across both sides of the Atlantic. I think, she said, there's more to the Queen's will than anyone has told us. And if the world knew what she really wrote, it would change everything. What did she mean? What secret was she hinting at? Because that single interview would set off a chain of events, leaks, counterleaks, investigations, that would lead back to Windsor itself and to the one person who knew exactly what the Queen had written to Harry. And when that letter was finally read aloud, even the King would struggle to hold back tears. Because the Queen's message to her grandson wasn't punishment. It was prophecy. And the moment Harry understood it, his entire life, and the monarchy's future, changed forever. It's hard to imagine the weight of being born into a story already written for you. A story that begins with grandeur and expectation, yet ends with exile and doubt. For Prince Harry, that was his destiny. But what he didn't know was that the Queen, his grandmother, had written one final chapter for him. One that would expose his deepest wounds and leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and legacy. When King Charles first opened the letter marked, "To my wayward son," he thought it was meant for him. After all, no monarch expects their mother to leave a message for someone who has publicly renounced the crown. But as he began to read, it became clear the tone was softer, more personal. This wasn't written to a king. It was written to a boy she had once cradled in her arms. Harry. The Queen's handwriting was delicate, her sentences deliberate. "My dearest grandson," it began, "you were born with your mother's heart and your father's temper. One made you loved, the other made you restless." Those words alone were enough to make Charles pause. He knew immediately that Harry needed to see this, that this letter wasn't meant to stay sealed away in Windsor. So he ordered it sent, through the most private channels, to California. But before we open that letter with Harry, let's go back to the days before it was written. Because understanding the Queen's words means understanding what she saw in him, and how, in her eyes, the boy she adored had slowly become a stranger. The Queen had always had a soft spot for Harry. He made her laugh when others made her sigh. Where William was measured and cautious, Harry was spontaneous, irreverent, the spark that lit up even her most formal gatherings. "He's the one who makes me forget I'm the Queen," she once joked. But as Harry grew older, that spark turned into volatility. After Diana's death, the grief hardened him. He sought distraction, first in the army, then in parties, then in rebellion. Still, the Queen stood by him. When scandals broke, inappropriate costumes, late-night escapades, questionable headlines, she didn't scold him. She simply said, "He's still finding his way." And when he introduced Meghan, she welcomed her with cautious optimism. "If she makes him happy, that is enough," she said. But soon, happiness turned to conflict. The Queen watched, helpless, as Harry began to distance himself, first from William, then from the palace, then from her. Their calls grew shorter. His tone grew colder. "He sounds angry," she confided once to her aide. "Not at us, at himself. But he doesn't know it." Still, she refused to close the door. Even after the Oprah interview, when the world was calling the Sussexes out for betrayal, the Queen forbade her staff from speaking ill of them. "We do not respond in kind," she said. "That is not our way." But her silence didn't mean approval. It meant calculation. When she began writing her will, she didn't act from bitterness. She acted from heartbreak. She had seen the pattern before. Another royal consumed by love, then pride, then regret. She had seen it with her uncle, Edward VIII, the man who abdicated for love and left the crown to her father. And now, history was repeating itself, only this time the exile was not forced, but chosen. And that, perhaps, was what hurt her most. In her private writings, she referred to Harry as the prodigal one. There were entire pages of reflection on him, moments of sorrow, frustration, and, occasionally, hope. "He still believes he is running away from us," she wrote once. "He does not see that he is running toward himself." She even kept a photograph of him and Meghan with baby Archie on her desk long after they left, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of how quickly joy can turn to distance. But the breaking point came not from interviews or documentaries. It came from silence. When Prince Philip died, Harry's delayed arrival at the funeral left the Queen deeply wounded. She never said so publicly, but those closest to her recall her saying, "Grief does not wait for convenience." That line, half sorrow, half disappointment, revealed more than she intended. For the Queen, duty was not something you did when it was easy. It was what you did when it hurt the most. And Harry had stopped understanding that. By the time she fell ill in 2022, she had stopped expecting reconciliation. She had prayed for it, yes, but she no longer believed it would come. Instead, she left behind words meant to guide him long after she was gone. The letter arrived in California 2 weeks after the will was read. It was delivered by hand, in a sealed diplomatic pouch. Harry received it while he and Meghan were reportedly preparing for another media appearance. When he saw the royal seal, he froze. "It's from my grandmother," he whispered. He opened it alone. The first line made him sit down. "My dear boy, I loved you too much to leave you misunderstood." The letter went on for several pages, handwritten, not dictated, every word deliberate. "You sought freedom," she wrote, "but you mistook freedom for peace. You can leave palaces and titles, but you cannot leave the weight of your name. That name will follow you, not as burden, but as reminder. You were born to serve something greater than applause." Harry read the words twice, then 3 times. His hands trembled. "She doesn't understand," he murmured to himself. But deep down, he knew she did, better than anyone. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't even disappointed. It was mournful, a goodbye written with a steady hand and a broken heart. She saw through him, one royal source later said. Not with judgment, but with clarity. She knew he was still trying to make peace with his mother's ghost. There was one paragraph that stood out, the Queen's reflection on Meghan. It wasn't cruel. It was almost tender. "I welcome the woman you love because I saw your mother in her," she wrote. "But love should build, not burn. The fire you both lit has warmed many hearts, but it has also scorched bridges that may never be rebuilt. I pray one day you find the right balance between warmth and flame." Harry's eyes welled as he read those words. For the first time in years, he didn't feel defiant. He felt small. And then came the part that would haunt him forever. "When the time comes, and the crown weighs upon your brother's head, remember this. You are not his shadow. You are his mirror. And if the mirror turns dark, the crown will too." He didn't understand what she meant, not fully, but it lingered in his mind for days. At the end of the letter, she had written something that broke even Charles when he read it. "Do not come home to reclaim what you've lost. Come home when you remember who you are." No signature, just her initials. Yar. That was it. Harry sat in silence for hours. Meghan found him later, the letter folded beside him. "What did she say?" she asked. "She forgave me," he said quietly. "But she also warned me." From that day, those around Harry noticed a change. He became quieter, more reflective. The defiance that once defined him began to fade, replaced by a kind of unease. He started reaching out, cautiously, to his brother's office. A few short messages. No replies. In private, he admitted to a friend, "It's strange. I spent years trying to escape her shadow, and now all I want is to hear her voice again." He began rereading the letter almost daily, and each time, new meanings seemed to appear between the lines. He fixated on one phrase. "You can leave palaces and titles, but you cannot leave the weight of your name." The more he thought about it, the more he realized what she had been trying to tell him. Freedom, as he had imagined it, wasn't the absence of duty, it was the acceptance of it on his own terms. And that realization terrified him, because it meant he couldn't run anymore. Months later, when Charles invited him back to Britain for a brief visit, Harry carried that letter in his jacket pocket the entire time. During a private audience, he reportedly placed it on the table in front of his father. "She understood me better than I thought," he said. Charles nodded, though he didn't speak. The silence between them wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't hostile either. It was the silence of two men who had both lost the woman who once bridged them. Have you ever noticed how every candid Meghan Markle moment looks like it was shot by a director with a storyboard? Every smile framed, every gesture lit just right, every supposed accident polished to cinematic precision. Coincidence? Or choreography? That's where the mystery begins. The Dodgers video wasn't some grainy fan clip. It was flawless, perfectly centered, steady, bright, and clear enough for a magazine cover. Not a hint of chaos. Not a single blur. It looked too good. And when something looks too good, people start to dig. The internet became a detective agency overnight. Frame by frame, angle by angle, viewers tore that clip apart like investigators at a crime scene. Who was holding the camera? Why was it already recording before the big cheer? How did it capture Meghan's reaction exactly as the Dodgers won? Not a second early, not a second late. Too clean. Too calculated. The conclusion? It had to be staged. Now, here's where things get interesting. Kelly McKee-Zajfin, the friend who posted the video, said she just wanted to share a fun night. But that didn't satisfy anyone. Because, as one fan noted on X, that's not a phone video from a friend. That's influencer quality, crisp lighting, ideal framing. Someone knew what they were doing. And they were right. When video experts analyzed the clip, they pointed out subtle signs of setup, the stabilized focus, the lack of shake, and the way Meghan was placed dead center with soft shadows behind her. It looked intentional, not random. So who filmed it? Sources say it wasn't Kelly. She appears briefly in another angle posted later, meaning someone else had to be behind the phone. Someone Meghan trusted enough to stand close. Rumors spread that it was her assistant, trained in PR, quick with a camera, always ready for natural content. Meghan had used this strategy before, a friend or staffer capturing moments that looked spontaneous but were actually rehearsed. The idea wasn't new. It's a Hollywood trick called curated authenticity. You script realness. You design imperfection. You make it look like you're not trying when every frame is carefully controlled. And Meghan? She mastered it. From her first paparazzi walks in Canada to her private charity visits in LA, everything followed the same rhythm. Nothing left to chance. Not even happiness. But this time it went wrong. Because even the best performances can't survive an uninterested co-star. Harry's blank face broke the illusion. The clip was meant to show them as a fun, down-to-earth couple, Meghan cheering, Harry smiling at her joy. But when he didn't play along, the shot turned from romantic to uncomfortable. The silence between them was louder than the cheering crowd. And that one detail, that one expression, ruined everything. The same internet that used to praise their chemistry now used the footage as proof of disconnect. People began editing the video into parodies. Meghan waving wildly beside a frozen Harry, dramatic music swelling underneath. One viral caption summed it up: when you're acting in a scene and your scene partner didn't get the memo. Cruel, yes, but undeniably effective. The narrative had flipped overnight. Instead of Meghan looking joyful, she looked desperate. Instead of Harry looking composed, he looked cold. And the one thing no one could stop asking was, if this wasn't staged, how did the camera get such a perfect view? Here's the part that made even her defenders pause. Meghan has always had a pattern of being caught at just the right moment. Remember when paparazzi photographed her carrying Archie's baby bump in Canada, looking tearful but beautiful? Or when her New York charity appearances coincided with media coverage timed to her Netflix projects? Every coincidence matched a PR timeline. Every spontaneous photo aligned with a new brand move. That's not luck. That's logistics. Publicists call it visibility strategy. You don't wait for the moment, you manufacture it. And Meghan, with her Hollywood instincts, had always known how to turn a setting into a story. So when she and Kelly walked into that stadium, Meghan already understood the assignment. The lighting was perfect. The crowd was energetic. The timing was symbolic. The Dodgers winning felt like a metaphor for victory. She had everything she needed for a comeback shot. But one thing she didn't